Mantises are some of the most alien-looking animals on Earth. They're also one of the most effective predators. But how have these slow-moving weirdos managed to conquer almost every continent on Earth? Their main weapon is the element of surprise. These are the mantises.
Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic.
Mantises are a diverse order of insects. With 2,400 species, they come in a huge variety of shapes and sizes. Their closest relatives are the cockroaches, and, like their cousins, mantises are found all over the world in tropical and temperate climates. Their success comes from a simple hunting strategy. Wait for prey to get within striking range, and then impale them with their spiked limbs.
To do this effectively, they have 3 crucial adaptations. The first one is their eyes.
Mantises have some of the best vision among all invertebrates. Their compound eyes are made of thousands of hexagonal photoreceptor clusters called ommatidia. Large species can have over 10,000 ommatidia. Each ommatidia creates a very tiny image, like a pixel on a computer screen. Their brains then combine all the pixels to make up a full image.
Mantises seem to always be staring at you with their tiny, beady pupils. And they are staring at you, but their pupils have nothing to do with it.
In fact, the black dots on their eyes are not even pupils. They're called pseudopupils. And they're the ommatidia that absorb the light coming head-on.
What makes their vision superior to almost all invertebrates is their 3D vision.
Just like in humans, their 2 eyes create slightly different images, and their brains put them together to create depth perception. Scientists found this out by putting tiny 3D glasses on them and running the same test they used to test depth perception in humans. Mantises were able to pick up changes in depth that would be imperceptible to us. This is how they know exactly when to strike to catch their prey. Their vision is so simple, yet so accurate, that engineers are studying their eyes to build 3D cameras.
The second tool in their arsenal is their spiked limbs.
Maybe the most iconic part of the mantis's anatomy is their folded forelimbs. They give the mantis their common name, praying mantis. The most common mantis species is also known as Mantis religiosa, the religious mantis.
But it is their prey who should be praying.
When a mantis grasps its prey, it impales it with sharp spikes on its femur and tibia. The more the prey struggles, the deeper the spikes penetrate. Once prey has been secured, they begin to eat. They don't even need to kill it first. They'll just eat it alive.
That's one way to eat your food while it's still fresh.
This strategy helps them catch anything from small insects to tarantulas. There have even been reports of mantises catching birds and fish.
So why are so many animals getting that close to such a deadly predator? The answer is their third adaptation, mimicry.
Thousands of mantises have evolved to look like objects in their environment. This serves the dual purpose of hiding from their predators and prey. Some look like vegetation. There are deadleaf mantises that look like natural debris. The stick mantises look like twigs. Leaf mantises resemble fresh leaves. Bark mantises blend in with the trees. And ghost mantises look like a bouquet of colored greens. They even rock from side to side to imitate leaves swaying in the wind.
You could almost have a whole tree made out of mantises, and you wouldn't even know it.
The most beautiful mantises in the world are the flower mantises, particularly the orchid mantis. These mantises look like orchid flowers and attract insects looking for a lick of pollen. This is called aggressive mimicry, and the results can be stunning. Equally effective are the ant mantises. Unlike mantises, ants have chemical defenses and taste pretty bad, which makes them unappealing to predators. Young ant mantises mimic ants to deter predators, though as they grow, they look less and less like ants and more like regular mantises.
When hiding doesn't work, they go on the offensive.
When threatened, mantises open their forelimbs to appear larger. Some fan their wings, and several species have patterns or shapes to scare away predators. They're famously brave, and are known to stand up to dogs and cats hundreds of times larger than them.
First blow by the praying mantis.
Lightning fast punch.
Friday looks pretty surprised, coming in again.
He looks disoriented. Oh, and again!
Second blow, very nice, looked like a
Wow.
right hook. And now the praying mantis just sort of fades. Look at him fading, he's fainting.
Look
and
at the
taking another
confidence.
couple of swings, but he's done the damage, and now Friday trying desperately to find his adversary.
He's completely invisible.
Very difficult. And the bell ends the round.
They have a reputation for being cannibalistic, but that's just bad science.
Scientists observed that in lab conditions, female mantises sometimes ate their male counterparts. What they failed to mention was that they had been starved for days. So sometimes they do eat their mates, but only when necessary for survival.
One of the coolest mantis breeding behaviors is found in the Brunner's stick mantis. They're independent girls who don't need no mantis.
In fact, no males of that species have ever been found, and they're thought to reproduce asexually.
Vision is one of the greatest tools of the mantis, but at night, they have to rely on their other senses.
Some mantises can hear with their belly. Some species, such as the budwig mantis, can detect high-frequency noises using specialized organs in their abdomen. This helps them detect bats. If they're on a tree and a bat approaches, they jump down to the relative safety of the ground. Cockroaches are one of the most despised and misunderstood creatures in the world. There are thousands of species with important ecological roles, but their name gets tarnished by the few species that have adapted to life among humans. This is the story of the insects that conquered the world millions of years ago, and will still be here well after we're gone.
La cucaracha, ya no puede caminar.
There are over 4,000 known cockroach species, and scientists estimate that there might be thousands more yet to be discovered. They have successfully spread to nearly every corner of the globe.
Cockroaches can be easily identified by their flattened oval shape, their small heads with chewing mandibles, and the plate that protects their heads from above.
Most species play an important role in their ecosystem as detritus eaters. They recycle the nutrients in rotting plant matter. They also play an important role as a food source to many animals, such as large insects, birds, and rodents.
In one particularly gruesome case, emerald jewel wasps will zombify cockroaches, guide them into a dark den, and then they'll inject them with their larvae. The wasp larva then eats the cockroach alive from the inside.
Cockroaches are found on every continent except Antarctica. They can survive the freezing temperatures of northern latitudes by secreting antifreeze into their open circulatory system.
Different species specialize in different environments, and you can find them in cities, forests, deserts, and even bodies of water. Unlike their close relatives, termites, cockroaches are not eusocial, but they are gregarious. They also like to stick together as families, and colonies are multi-generational.
The only problem is that colonies grow exponentially, especially when fed by our leftovers. They can even eat our hair and our fingernails.
A female German cockroach and her offspring, which are found in homes throughout the world, can produce 30,000 eggs in 1 year, which in some cases can lead to a huge infestation. In New York City, there are an estimated 100 million cockroaches, about 7 for every human.
Living in groups is important to cockroaches because they need their peers to teach them how to cockroach.
German cockroaches raised in captivity were less likely to leave their hiding spots, were less interested in the opposite sex, and were worse at finding food.
They're like incels.
To find each other in their often dark environments, they communicate using pheromones. Some species secrete them through glands, while others, including our beloved German cockroach, deposit their chemical letters in their poo.
Their aversion to light is almost universal among species.
They prefer dark, warm, and moist places. The main exception is the Asian cockroach, which seems to be attracted to light sources and white surfaces.
Despite our collective hatred for them, cockroaches can be truly awesome and incredibly diverse.
The biggest cockroach is the Australian giant burrowing cockroach, which can be 9 centimeters long and weigh up to 35 grams, about as heavy as a hamster. It is also rare among invertebrates, as the mom gives birth to live babies instead of laying eggs. Each brood might produce up to 30 babies.
Almost as long but not nearly as heavy is the giant cockroach from Central and South America.
These cockroaches are relatively light, and when they molt, they're totally white. Spooky. On the other side of the scale are members of the genus Ataphala, which are so tiny that they live among leafcutter ants. They eat the ants' food with impunity because they can mimic the ants' smell and pheromones.
If the colony wants to expand its territory, the cockroach attaches itself to an ant's wings and hitches a ride.
The loudest cockroach is the Madagascar hissing cockroach. They make this terrifying noise when excited, stressed, and during courtship.
The fastest cockroach is the American cockroach. It can cover 50 times its body length in 1 second. The cutest cockroach pageant is surprisingly tough to call, as they come in a wide range of colors and shapes.
The Prosoplecta genus mimics ladybugs, which to us are adorable, but to predators, they look disgusting. The glow spot cockroaches are a genus that look like Jawas when it's dark out. This might scare predators away, attract lady cockroaches, and Star Wars fans. And some species of the Parasphaeriinae subfamily look like cute pillbugs.
Despite their awesomeness, some cockroach species can be harmful to humans.
They can play a role in disseminating antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which they carry on their waxy cuticle. They also might have allergens that may cause allergic reactions.
Finally, and most disgustingly, cockroaches can crawl into your ears.
Though it's very rare, there are a number of reported cases where a cockroach crawls into a human ear and gets stuck. This is very painful as they might bite your eardrum, irritate your skin, and cause bacterial infections.
This usually happens at night, so sleep with your ears closed. On the other hand, they can be useful to humans.
For example, they're used as food across Asia, where they're deep fried. Their insides are apparently soft like cottage cheese. Even cooler, scientists are making remote-controlled cockroach cyborgs. They can even control their movements through their phone. Someday, they might be used for reconnaissance or rescue missions.
Eventually, you might be able to tell your army of cockroaches to grab you a beer.
One of the main myths about cockroaches is that they can survive nuclear warfare. This is not entirely false. An explosion will kill them, but they're way better equipped than us to survive nuclear fallout. They do have much higher radiation resistance, although it's not higher than other insects like botflies. Ants are the architects of the animal world. Millions of years before we built the first cities, ants were already building gigantic megastructures. Most ant species build elaborate networks of tunnels and chambers, but some of the greatest engineers have colonized the tree canopy, and they build amazing cities out of leaves.
There are two species of weaver ants in the world, Ecophylla longinota from Eastern Africa and Ecophylla smaragdina found everywhere from India to Oceania.
They live at the tops of the tree canopy, where it's safe from large animals. Their colonies are huge, often containing over 500,000 ants, and they're built using tree leaves. They extend over hundreds of square meters and can occupy several trees.
All of this is built by tiny worker ants, 8 millimeters long. They're about the size of a grain of rice.
When looking for new areas to expand the colony, worker ants test leaves by bending them and aligning them with other nearby leaves. If the leaves have the right flexibility and location, other workers join in to help attach the leaves together. They grab one leaf with their front legs and another with their hind legs, and literally zipper the leaves together. Often, leaves are too far apart for one line of ants to hold together, so weaver ants solve this problem by grabbing each other by the waist, creating ant chains. They're the world's only useful conga lines.
When two leaves are touching, it's time to sew them together. To do this, they use an unconventional source of silk, their own babies.
Larvae from many ant species produce silk to make cocoons for themselves, but weaver ant larvae forego the protection of a cocoon for the security of a safe shelter.
Worker ants carry the larvae to the construction site and use them as glue guns.
The larvae are held in the worker's mandibles and are softly squeezed while the worker moves back and forth from one leaf to another. They'll continue with several leaves until a ball of leaves, ranging in size from a tennis ball to a volleyball, is created.
Surviving in these leaf ball cities in the canopy requires lots of work and constant vigilance.
Weaver ants constantly expand their colony. If one ball gets knocked down, there's always a backup. The queen lives at the center of the colony, while elderly workers live in the periphery, catching any prey that wanders in and protecting the colony from any invaders.
It's said that while humans send their young men to war, weaver ants send their old ladies.
But not every foreigner is unwelcome in a weaver ant colony. Small insects such as mealybugs and scale insects are protected as they secrete a delicious and nutritious substance called honeydew. These insects are sometimes taken to designated pens where they're fed and milked.
This is an example of ranching in the animal kingdom. Weaver ants are also adept at chemical warfare.
When fighting invaders or killing prey, they secrete formic acid. Their bites are famously painful, and they're able to kill large prey, like lizards and birds. Weaver ants are so good at defending their territory that some people in Southeast Asia use them as a defense mechanism for their crops.
To talk about their use by humans, I've asked my friend Mikey from Ants Canada to tell me about weaver ants in the Philippines and how to take care of your own weaver ant colony.
Thank you, Danielle. Hi guys, Mikey aka Ants Canada here, and boy am I excited to share what I've learned about weaver ants, as I feel they're the unicorns of the ant world, in my books. Weaver ants are really cool ants because of their unique nesting strategies. They create leaf nests, so you need to provide them ideal plants or trees to nest in. Here in the Philippines, where I currently live, they love nesting in mango trees and other fruit trees. Mine are currently nesting in a money tree plant. You can start a colony with a couple of queens, as I've come to discover that they're polygynous, which means a single colony can contain more than one queen. They will lay eggs that turn into workers. The workers start expanding the colony little by little, and as it gets bigger, it becomes more efficient and able to support more larvae. If you open a nest, you'll see that there are smaller workers who take care of the larvae. These are about half the size of big workers. They're the nannies of the colony. In other ant species, there are a lot of tiny workers and a few big soldiers. Weavers are the opposite. There's a lot more big workers than small ones. This is because you need the biggest ants to do the construction work. One thing to keep in mind is to feed them the right mix of sugars and proteins for them to stay healthy and productive. For a sugar food source, I find my pet weaver ant colony loves beetle jelly. I find my weaver ants get tired of the same old food after a while, so I provide various flavors of beetle jelly, including coconut, mango, brown sugar, and watermelon on a cycle. This sugar source gives the workers the energy they need to perform their everyday tasks and nest construction. For a protein source, I feed pre-killed mealworms and crickets. They carry the prey back to their leaf nests to consume in private. The protein is essential for the queen's egg-laying demands and the growth of the larvae. Of course, water is also necessary for the ants to drink and the plants they live on to remain healthy and growing. I've got my weaver ant set up on an automatic ring system. If you're curious about these and other ant colonies, we've got a ton of videos on various ants that live in my ant room. So feel free to visit my channel, Ants Canada, and discover how ants are some of the coolest creatures on the planet. It's Ant Love Forever, and now it's back to you, Danielle.
Thanks, Mikey.
Weaver ants are so common in Southeast Asia that they're not only used for crop protection, but also as a source of food. They're full of protein, and their formic acid gives them a tangy flavor.
Anyone down for a weaver ant tapenade? Wasps are the worst thing about the end of summer, yet it turns out they might just be my new favorite animal. First things first, wasp taxonomy is weird. Wasps are very closely related to ants, bees, and sawflies, as you may have guessed from their appearance and fastidious nature. In fact, some wasps are more closely related to bees than they are to other species of wasp. The general definition for a wasp is any insect in the Hymenoptera order and Apocrita suborder that is not a bee or ant. There are a lot of different species of wasp, over 100,000. Since the group is so large, many species exhibit dramatically different behavior. For example, some wasps, like the bane of everyone's summer, the yellow jacket, are eusocial. This means that they live in colonies, raise young that aren't their own, and have specific jobs, similar to ants and many bees. Yet, many other species of wasps are solitary and only ever interact with other wasps when mating. The species that do build nests build them out of wood pulp mixed with saliva, and the insides of their nest is often velvety to the touch. It's not just differing behavior though. Often, you wouldn't know a wasp was a wasp just by looking at it. Wasps come in a large variety of shapes, sizes, colors, and the only thing that the entire group has in common is their thin waist. Their bodies range in size from the giant, 7 centimeters long, to the tiny, 0.1 millimeters long. Wasps have been around annoying people for a really long time, 150 million years to be specific. However, the first wasps to appear that resembled modern wasps were around 60 million years ago. As far as interactions with humans go, it's safe to say that they've been around ruining barbecues for as long as we've been around having them. In fact, possibly the earliest reference to wasps in human literature comes from the Greek comedy from 422 BC titled The Wasp, their name coming from a chorus of old jurors featured in the play. Similar to their much more popular relatives, the bees, wasps do pollinate. They're just not very good at it. You see, bees are covered in fuzz, and when they land on a flower, the pollen easily sticks to their bodies. On the other hand, most wasps are slick, and the pollen just doesn't take hold nearly as well. Wasps primarily eat nectar, and as the season winds down, their hunting time grows shorter. They grow hungrier, angrier, and more desperate. In fact, some might say they begin to terrorize. Which is why they're such assholes in the late summer and early autumn. They fall prey primarily to small birds and me with a newspaper. Though some species, like the giant Japanese hornet, do fall prey to the larger predators like the honey buzzard, which are relatives of the hawk. Now, despite their reputation for being the literal worst, there is something worse than a wasp. They're larvae. Wasp larvae are the biggest jerks in the animal kingdom. You heard it here first, folks. First of all, many of them are parasitoid, meaning that they are deposited and raised in a host body. That's a nice way of saying some wasps lay eggs in their prey. Watch out, Peter! Then, the larvae will eat the host from the inside out. Though some larvae won't devour the host from the inside, and instead will just eat all of the food that the host consumes. Other species of wasp will lay their eggs in egg clusters from other species, and their larvae will eat the competing eggs. So, that's nice. Though it's the aptly named emerald jewel wasp who takes the cake for most horrific and craziest reproductive cycle. This wasp will find a cockroach about 4 times its size, sting it to take it out of commission, and then it will sting its head with surgical precision, disabling the part of the roach's brain that controls dopamine output. This stops the output, basically taking away all free will of movement from the cockroach, turning it into a zombie roach, which is a phrase I hoped I'd never have to say. After this struggle, to recoup some lost energy, the wasp will rip off one of the roach's antennae for a little roach blood pick-me-up. They will then lead their new zombie pet to a tunnel, where they'll lay their eggs on the zombie roach and then blockade said tunnel. The eggs will hatch, and the larvae will burrow into the still living, still zombified cockroach and feed on its insides. A few weeks later, a fully developed emerald jewel wasp will burst out of the roach carcass like a frickin' xenomorph and go on to repeat the cycle. So yeah, fun times. Some wasp species, like the Polistes salsifer, are brood parasites, meaning that they'll lay their eggs in the nests of other wasps, who will mistakenly raise them as their own. Not all species of wasps are parasitoid, and instead can be solitary. After mating, the female will build a nest for the larvae, sometimes leaving the carcass of another insect in the nest for the larvae to feed on. This is called mass provisioning as opposed to progressive provisioning, which is when the mom has to constantly bring food for the larvae. Since adult wasps only ever really eat nectar, if you see a wasp catch another insect, it's to feed their babies. Some wasps' larvae even control the adults. Hornet adults can't digest solid food, so they will gather solid food to bring to their larvae, which can eat solids. The larvae will digest the food and produce a nutrient-rich liquid that the adults can eat. Possibly the most interesting wasp is the panda ant. You heard me. Despite what their name might have you believe, panda ants or velvet ants are a family of wasps that resemble ants, and the females are wingless. They come in a variety of bright colors, though it's the black and white ones that give them their name. They may look cute, but don't let that distract you. These girls pack a mean punch. They have been nicknamed cow killers, and their sting has been rated a 3 out of 4 on the Schmidt Pain Index for insect bites. Since they are not eusocial and are solitary, panda ants are classified as wasps instead of ants. I told you wasp taxonomy is weird. But next up, we have the marvelously named tarantula hawk. These gorgeous wasps have a sting that rates a 4 out of 4 on the Schmidt Pain Index, and they are one of only 3 animals to achieve this rating, ranking second only to the bullet ant. Schmidt describes the sting as blinding, fierce, and shockingly electric. It's supposed to paralyze your body for 5 minutes. So yeah, crazy bite, but that's not the best part. They were named tarantula hawks for a reason. They're huge, measuring 5 centimeters long, and they kill tarantulas. But not in a regular, boring, let's kill this thing for food type of way. Nope. Tarantula hawks are much more clever than that. Similar to the emerald jewel wasp, they will sting the tarantula to permanently paralyze it, and then they will lay their eggs inside the still living tarantula. The larvae will then hatch and eat their way out of the tarantula, who lives just long enough to bear witness to this entire horrifying experience. But they aren't the only big wasp out there. Meet the giant Japanese hornet, a wasp that has truly earned its name. They measure over 4 centimeters long and have a wingspan of over 6 centimeters. These wasps are eusocial and live in colonies with thousands of other giant Japanese hornets. That is a literal nightmare. These wasps are super helpful and super harmful. Often, farmers love them because they control crop pest populations, but apiarists, on the other hand, hate them because they can decimate a honeybee colony in a couple of hours. European honeybees are especially vulnerable as they have no evolutionary defenses against these behemoths 4 times their size. About 30 giant Japanese hornets can kill about 30,000 European honeybees in just under 3 hours. They attack, picking off the puny honeybees one by one, slaughtering their population and ignoring the fallen carcasses of the honeybees, as that's not what they're there to eat. When the honeybee defenses have fallen, the hornets will enter the colony, feast on the larvae, and bring their flesh back to feed their queen. It's pretty brutal. Japanese honeybees fare a bit better than their European cousins, as they've had the benefit of evolving alongside the hornets. While the Japanese honeybees are still no match in size for the hornets, they do have one strategy, and it's pretty smart. They will lure a single hornet into the heart of their colony, and right when it's about to go to town on their larvae, the honeybees will pounce. Hundreds of them will pile on top of the hornet, vibrating and creating a convection oven to cook the hornet alive. Honeybees can tolerate a slightly higher temperature threshold than the hornets, and when their pile reaches 47 degrees Celsius, the hornet is done for. If you ever run into a giant Japanese hornet, I suggest you get out of there. When they sting, they inject large amounts of venom, and that venom is so powerful it can dissolve human skin. And finally, the warrior wasp. These eusocial wasps look like they're made of obsidian, and along with the bullet ant and tarantula hawk, are the only insects in the world to rate a 4 on the Schmidt Pain Index. He described the pain as torture. You're chained to the flow of an active volcano. Why did I start this list? Warrior wasps, as their name suggests, are very aggressive and attack in large groups. Not only that, but when they feel threatened, they can beat their wings against their bodies to make a sound similar to that of marching soldiers. As annoying as wasps can be, they play an incredibly valuable role in the ecosystem. Wasps are apex predators, responsible for keeping arthropod populations in check. Arthropods, including spiders, mites, and other insects, are the largest phylum in the world, and without wasps to regulate their populations, the world would be overrun with a plague of pests. This struggle between predator and prey is as interesting as anything you'd see on the plains of the Serengeti, just on a macro scale. Even better, this amazing clash between insects is something that you can see right at home in your backyard. A voracious tadpole hunter
a flying scuba diver, and the holder of the most unusual eyes in the animal kingdom. This is one of the most specialized insects in the world, but it has colonized most freshwater ponds and streams in warm and temperate climates. This is the diving beetle. Diving beetles are found all over the world in ponds with leafy cover. They live in every continent except, you guessed it, Antarctica. There are over 4,000 species, and they range in size from about 1 centimeter to 5 centimeters long. Most diving beetles are brown or black, but the more stylish species can rock the polka dot look.
Diving beetles are masters of the land, water, and air.
They spend most of their lives underwater, though they're good flyers and will go from pond to pond looking for new sources of food. Their ability to fly is especially important to species in warmer climates, as their ponds tend to evaporate in the summer. To avoid predators such as birds and dragonflies, they fly at night and rely on chemoreception to find new ponds. Once they find a new pond, they dive down and look for vegetation. Their long and powerful hind limbs propel them as they look for the perfect plant or rock to cling to. If live prey or a carcass drifts nearby, they'll pounce on it and devour it.
When it comes to diving beetles, most things are on the menu, as they're often rushing to get enough energy to molt, pupate, or reproduce.
Mosquito larvae, tadpoles, and carrion of larger vertebrates are their most common prey, and they'll often gang up to eat it. Even crickets are readily eaten if they happen to fall into the water.
My favorite species is the sunburst diving beetle. It was only discovered in 1996, but since then it's become one of the most popular beetles at zoos and aquaria.
Their beautiful coloration is a warning to predators. In the back of their head, they have glands that secrete a noxious milky substance. Most predators seem to avoid these little guys, but their defenses are especially effective against fish, as their chemicals contain fish deterrent steroids. The males also have tiny suction cups on their frontal limbs to help them attach themselves to rocks and to stick themselves to females for more convenient access during mating.
These little guys have a self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. They're literal scuba divers.
They're able to get air from the surface and make a bubble under their wings. The bubble is also known as a physical gill and extends towards the back of the animal where its breathing holes are located. The amazing thing about the bubble is that unlike scuba tanks, it can take oxygen from the surrounding water. This gives them extra diving time, but after a while the oxygen gets depleted. The beetle then releases its bubble and goes to the surface to get a new one.
Unfortunately for the beetle, their bubble is also home to parasites.
Mites attach themselves to their underwings and rely on the beetle's air to survive. If the beetle dies in the water, the mites die too, as they can't live anywhere else. Their association goes back over 100 million years, and it's one of the oldest extant examples of obligate parasitism.
Diving beetles are one of the rare examples in nature where the babies are cooler than the grown-ups. Their larvae are called water tigers due to their unmitigated badassery.
Water tigers are longer than adult diving beetles and have huge pincers to catch prey. Their hunting strategy consists mostly of waiting for pond critters to swim too close. Then, the water tiger attacks and chases the prey with quick, undulating motions. Tadpoles seem to be their favorite prey. Adult diving beetles often lay their eggs on frog eggs, so that when the water tigers emerge, they have a ready source of food. After they gorge themselves with delicious baby frogs and are ready to pupate, they come out of the water. They bury themselves in mud to undergo their complete metamorphosis.
The water tigers of the sunburst diving beetle have some of the most unusual eyes in the entire animal kingdom.
They are the only known example of truly bifocal vision. Their eyes have bifocal lenses connected to two separate retinas. The lenses are able to create two separate sharp images, each of which goes to a different retina. Unfortunately, the precise function of this arrangement is unknown, but it might help them to keep an eye on distant predators and the same eye on nearby prey.
You wake up one morning and look out the window to discover that the sky is brown. It's not a trick of the light or a blanket of smog, it's the bodies of millions and millions of bugs. The air is so thick with them that they block out the sun. You're terrified, but there's nowhere to run. This is what happens when locusts swarm. For thousands of years, locusts have been considered a plague on humanity, which makes sense because they can be a horror show for humans. Before we get into the why, let's start with the what. Locusts are flying insects belonging to the grasshopper family. Locusts make up just a fraction of the species of the grasshopper family. While there are tens of thousands of species of grasshoppers, there are less than 20 species of locusts. Unlike grasshoppers, in the right conditions, locusts get activated and enter a gregarious behavioral state, which is just a fancy way of saying they start to swarm. The most destructive migratory pest in the world is the desert locust species, found in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Their swarms can reach into the hundreds of millions or even billions of individuals. Being in the midst of millions of insects is nightmarish, even for the biggest bug fans. Unless you're trying to see Cristiano Ronaldo play, in which case, carry on. Yes, in 2023, locusts flapped into Mecca, Saudi Arabia, covering a soccer stadium and all of its eager onlookers with a blanket of bugs. No one seemed to mind, least of all Ronaldo, who still managed to score 4 goals. But locusts aren't just meme-worthy. They can also have a huge negative impact on humans and have been listed by the UN as the most destructive migratory pest in the world. Let's follow a swarm as it forms and moves across the land. It all started with the rain. The year is 2018, and a series of cyclones bring an unusually high amount of rain to Saudi Arabia's empty quarter, one of the driest and most remote places on Earth. This desert is home to a relatively small number of desert locusts, which survive the arid conditions by eating the little vegetation that grows there. The cyclones created temporary lakes and turned the region into an ephemeral oasis. The remoteness of this region ensured that no humans witnessed the locust bacchanal that was about to take place. The wet sand was also the perfect breeding ground for locust eggs. A single generation multiplies the population by 20. Within a few months, the locust population exploded, and soon they finished all the food in their native habitats. It was at this point that things got real serious. As locust numbers grow, they become more social and form the swarms that you know and loathe. Desert locusts especially are voracious eaters. A large swarm strips anything edible in a matter of minutes and eats away the food supplies of tens of thousands of people per day. So when they run out of food at home, they fly out and eat their neighbors' food. Their neighbors, unfortunately, are the millions of humans who live and farm in semi-arid regions. The arrival of these bugs and the knowledge of what they're capable of causes widespread fear and anxiety. Some regions experience desert locust swarms regularly, but others only see them once every few decades. These places are always the least prepared to deal with a locust swarm. As reports from the region announce the spread of the locusts, like a zombie apocalypse, the communities prepare. Those who find themselves amid the swarm worry about how it's going to affect their livelihoods, the long-term impact on their communities, and even if their families will soon plunge into food insecurity. To make their arrival even more terrifying, locusts are a veritable sensory overload. The eerie soundtrack they produce as they descend is a harbinger of horror. The sound of a swarm of locusts is often described as a rustling or buzzing sound. This noise is caused by 2 things. The first is stridulation, the buzzing and clicking that locusts make by rubbing their legs on their wings. If you've ever heard a cricket chirping, you know what stridulation sounds like. The second part of the oppressive din they make is caused by what's called crepidation. This is the flapping sound locusts make as they snap their wings taut in flight. Combined, these 2 sounds make a commotion as ominous as the score of a Christopher Nolan film. A Imagine standing in your field and hearing the muffled buzzing of an approaching swarm of locusts, knowing there's nothing you can do to stop the bugs from gobbling up your hard-won crops. This is exactly what happened to millions of people in 2019. Just as the plague of COVID-19 was descending upon humanity, another superbug of an entirely different sort was about to devastate regions as far-flung as Eastern Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Indian subcontinent. The locusts that had been born in the empty quarter had spread their wings and flown all over the region. They came to be collectively known as the locust crisis of 2019 to 2022, which still lingers to a lesser extent today. Billions of locusts swarmed those regions, putting tens of millions of people's lives at risk. Thankfully, it didn't reach plague status, which is the Category 5 hurricane of locust swarms. Plagues take over entire continents and last for several years. This was defined as an upsurge, with most of the damage contained within the Horn of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. But still, even though it wasn't a full plague, this upsurge of locusts was like nothing anyone had ever seen in decades. Residents in East Africa told of locusts getting absolutely everywhere, even finding locust heads in the stomachs of slaughtered livestock who had nibbled them off while eating what remained of their lunch. Cyclones aren't that unusual in this part of the world, but a string of unfortunate events created a perfect storm for this absolute hurricane of insects. First of all, the empty quarter is virtually inaccessible. There is no locust monitoring in this region. At 1,000 kilometers wide, it's simply too massive to canvass. So the locust populations grew without anyone knowing for months. Had we been privy to it, we could have done something about it. Instead, they reproduced in secret. Later that year, another cyclone hit, driving the breeding of the desert locust even further. And finally, a third cyclone in 2019 did its worst, blowing the swarms that originated there into the Horn of Africa. We can't just call this an act of nature, though, because more frequent cyclones in this region can be directly traced back to changes in our climate. The next unfortunately timed event was the pandemic. No one could have anticipated that the travel restrictions that were put in place to slow the spread of COVID-19 would also slow the response to the swarms of locusts. Pesticides and other equipment that's usually used to combat locusts wasn't able to arrive quickly enough. It was at this point that the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations got involved. We asked Keith Cressman, their senior locust forecaster, to tell us what happened next. Hi, Keith. Tell me what happens when a locust upsurge emerges. How do countries work together to stop it?
The way it works in the country, of course, is that this is always with their national government, of course, okay, and usually in the Ministry of Agriculture. And they have a center, let's say, usually it's quite a small center. And some of the people in the center doing the survey and the control. Another one is what we call Locust Information Officer, who manages all of the data. His idea or her idea is basically to send that data more or less every day to FAO. So we have kind of what's going on in the whole world, basically. Data is very important. Without the data, you really can't understand what's happening. And this is just for each country. They're only looking about what's going on in their country. They really don't know what's going on in the country next to them. So this is where FAO, this is our job basically, is to figure out all of the countries, all of the data, understand who's doing survey, who's doing control, and try to work together, which is very important.
Depending on the stage of the swarm and the capabilities of each country, they will use different strategies to deal with the locust. Some try to use biopesticides like green mussel, a fungus that targets locusts specifically, but might take up to 2 weeks to kill the insect. These have the advantage of not harming other animals, like bees and birds. But in extreme cases, chemical pesticides are often the cheapest and fastest way to kill the locusts. They usually die the day after they spray them, but unfortunately, they also kill many other animals in the ecosystem. Thankfully, thanks to the FAO and local governments, and through a combination of traditional pesticides and biopesticides, the locusts were defeated. Fighting the locusts cost over $200 million, and over 4 million tons of food were lost to the insects. It was a wake-up call to get more serious about monitoring them to prevent future upsurges. One of those tools is the amazing eLocust 3, which people use to report locust activity. Easy and early reporting is crucial. Since locusts breed fast and hatch quickly, any delay in dealing with the bugs will ensure another generation is born. And with every generation, the population explodes exponentially. It takes a locust about 2 weeks to hatch from an egg and another 6 weeks to turn into an adult. 1 month later, those new adults are already ready to lay more eggs. With lifespans of only 3 months, it's actually a bit incredible to see how much havoc they can wreak in their short lives. But their numbers can present an opportunity if you can think outside the box. Locusts can be upcycled, and a startup in Kenya focused on doing just that. And their plan was simply to buy locusts and turn the protein and nutrient bugs into fertilizer or livestock feed. Locusts become immobile at night due to the cooler temperatures. Under the cover of darkness, farmers who had lost their crops to the locust recovered it by grabbing the insects off trees and bushes, like picking grapes out of a grapevine. Then they gathered the animals in sacks, sometimes up to 1 ton of bugs in a single night, and sold them to the Bug Project. To see if they had been poisoned, the locusts were held in the sacks for several days. Those who died in the sack were likely to have been poisoned, so they were turned into fertilizer. And those who survived were considered safe to eat and turned into animal feed. Being over 50% protein, locusts make for a great meal for livestock. This approach allowed income back into the pockets of those most affected by the locust and taught them how to utilize the locusts on their next visit. Hey, if life gives you locusts, make locust aid. Now, we know how their swarms form, so let's get to know our formidable foes at a more personal level. Locusts don't always turn into plagues or even upsurges. In between locust Armageddon times, locusts are solitary creatures that just go about their buggy business. They even look completely different when they're solitary, only leveling up from bland into Technicolor after they join the fray. So what flips the switch, turning them into swarms bent on world domination? One study set out to discover just that. Basically, they touched locusts all over their bodies to see what areas, if any, would trigger the swarming instinct. They found that only touching the outside edge of their back legs flipped on the swarming switch. Another study then linked that physical contact with increased serotonin in a specific area of the locust nervous system, which is what ultimately triggers the urge to enter the gregarious phase. So when populations become too concentrated in an area to the point that they're rubbing hindquarters, all individuals are activated to swarm. Any solitary locusts they meet along the way are automatically sucked into the fold. And since they can travel 150 kilometers per day, the swarm can absorb a lot of lone locusts on their path of destruction. This is a path created by voracious hunger that often targets other locusts. Locusts aren't above cannibalism, and a big part of why they move is that they're trying to eat the locust in front of them while simultaneously trying to fly away from the one behind them. It really is a dog-eat-dog world for these insects. When they flap in, locusts can completely devastate rural areas that rely on agriculture for income and food. People have been complaining about locusts since at least as long as we've had writing. The first farmers likely had to deal with them, and they even got a huge shout out in the Bible as one of the worst possible things that can happen to a society. Since then, over and over, these insects have created refugees out of us humans, forcing farmers to uproot themselves and their families to escape the plagues and find new areas to cultivate. In 2013, a 15-kilometer-long, 500 billion strong locust plague hit Madagascar, thanks to the favorable conditions caused by Cyclone Haruna. Those insatiable pests gobbled up 100,000 tons of vegetation every single day, causing millions of people to become food insecure. A decade earlier, a 2-year-long outbreak of locusts in West Africa devastated the region, reaching as far north as southern Portugal and the Greek island of Crete. Before that, in 1915, there was the Ottoman Syria locust plague. The biggest swarm ever recorded in North America, or indeed anywhere else in the world, was known as Albert's Swarm in 1875. This gargantuan gathering of Rocky Mountain locusts was said to have contained somewhere between 3 and 12.5 trillion individuals. The swarm would have covered an area of 510,000 square kilometers, or half the size of Egypt. While the Rocky Mountain locust absolutely killed the crops of at least 4 US states at the time, just a quarter of a century later, agriculture would turn around and kill them right back. The last sighting of this devastating bug was made in 1902, and the species has since been extinct due to habitat loss and livestock grazing. As farmers plowed and flooded the ground, and the livestock crushed the soil and exposed the eggs, the locust disappeared. There are no other locust species in North America currently. Let's just hope they don't blow in on the tailwinds of the next human-caused climate event. The most common way to deal with locusts is by spraying them with pesticides, usually when they're in their flightless hopper phase, around 2 weeks after hatching. The best choice is to use a biopesticide, which only targets locusts and is safe for humans and livestock. Despite the existence of this biopesticide, their cheaper alternatives are those chemicals that can also have a negative impact on us. Over 90% of pesticides used in Kenya have been proven to cause serious harm to humans and their livestock. In Kenya, where fried locusts already often make their way to dinner plates, making them a larger part of the menu seems like a win-win solution. Though FAO officials warn against this practice since it's impossible to tell with absolute certainty if the locusts have been sprayed with pesticides. Making animals deal with them directly is another idea. In response to a locust plague in Pakistan, an internet rumor started swarming about the Chinese government sending an army of 100,000 bug-eating ducks to help with the problem. Apparently, this started when an expert on a Chinese news channel said that ducks could be used as biological warfare against these insects. That was enough to start up the international meme mill that a duck army was preparing to waddle into battle against the locusts. Several of these approaches might be tested sooner rather than later, as we expect more upsurges in the next few years as more rain falls in deserts in the region.
Basically, we're expecting, because of the climate change, that it's going to be much more of a problem in East Africa. Another possibility is with the climate change, in terms of the weather and the temperature, basically, they have possibilities for the locusts to move further north than normal. So further up into the southern part of Europe, for example. They won't be able to go up to the Alps, for example. You can't go to the big mountains like that. The other possibilities we're expecting, of course, is during the climate change, is that the seasons will start earlier than normal and finish later than normal. So that means during the summer, during the winter, and during the spring. So this means you have an extra generations or a couple generations of a locust that normally you would not have. And of course, when you have more generation and more locusts, you then have possibilities for an upsurge of plague.
So let's keep monitoring the region and report locusts when you see them. We'll put a link to download the app in the description. If you live in areas where desert locusts exist, you can contribute to stopping the next upsurge. Keith is optimistic that technology is the best way to win the fight.
But I don't think that we're going to really have any plagues. I would not think we have plagues. We haven't had a plague now for 50 years or nearly. And that's mainly because we have, all of these apps. We have good surveys. Countries are much better than they could be in the 1960s and 1970s.
And on top of government agencies, lots of organizations exist that are aimed at helping to quell the flow of bugs and assist those whose lives have been devastated by them. Time and time again, we've seen that when communities come together, they're capable of helping each other through even biblical level plagues.
Nothing quite makes you say, nope, 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 like a centipede. There's a reason these scary-looking arthropods are used in movies to add tension. The word unpleasant comes to mind. There are over 3,000 described species of centipede creeping around all over the world, preferring warm and temperate climates.
In fact, unless you're one of the 4,000 or so people who live in Antarctica, there's probably a centipede in your house right now. It may even be watching this episode with you, learning hunting strategies from their larger, wilder cousins.
While centipedes may cause a guttural, vile reaction in you, the vast majority are harmless. Their bodies consist of a head with a pair of antennae and a pair of legs that are built into their stinging structures and venom glands. They have an odd number of body segments with a pair of legs on each segment, and an elongated pair of legs on the last body segment.
Because they always have an odd number of body segments, there are no centipedes with an even 100 legs. I guess Centipedes wasn't catchy enough.
Due to the wide variety of species, different species grow in different ways. Some species are born with the total number of legs they'll ever have, while others gain legs through molting. They range in size from about 1 centimeter to about 30 centimeters long, though the majority top out at 10 centimeters long.
Centipedes are also one of the longest living classes of invertebrates, with some species able to live up to 10 years.
There are 5 orders of centipede. The order you may be most familiar with is Scuba. These are house centipedes. These creepy crawlies are super fast and like to live in dark, damp environments. They've been measured running at 40 centimeters a second. They have a distinct shape, as each pair of their legs are longer than the pair in front of them. In some cases, their last pair of legs can be twice as long as their first pair. This is a result of their molting process. They get longer legs as they progress through their various stages of incomplete metamorphosis, gaining up to 15 body segments as they mature.
Their vision isn't very good.
Their compound eyes are made up of a large number of simple eyes, called ocelli. These simple eyes can only distinguish between light and dark. It would be like if instead of your eyes being a regular camera, you had thousands of cameras, each taking simple black and white, single pixel-sized photos, which you would stitch together to make a full image. Kind of like an 8-bit vision in black and white.
As an illustrator, I can say that image is rather horrific.
The second order of centipedes is lithobiomorpha. These are known as rock or stone centipedes due to their choice of locale. Like house centipedes, they can have up to 15 body segments, which they gain through incomplete metamorphosis. Most rock centipedes don't have eyes, and instead rely on chemoreception to get around.
The rarest order of centipede is Craterostigmomorpha. Say that 5 times fast. And this order only has 2 species.
In their first molt, they go from 12 to 15 segments, but in every subsequent molt, they don't gain any new segments. These centipedes ward off predators and parasites by secreting disgusting smelling chemicals.
Because we needed another reason to stay away.
Geophilomorpha, or soil centipedes, is the most diverse order, and they also have the most legs. Hemantarium gabrielis, for example, has 179 body segments for a total of 358 legs.
The most badass order of centipedes, however, is Scolopendromorpha. This order contains the giant centipede.
Most of these centipedes have 21 or 23 segments and are famous for that big ol' stinger, or forcipules. Centipedes use venom to paralyze prey, and the bigger centipedes hunt small vertebrates, like mice, birds, and snakes.
They're opportunistic hunters and will take whatever chance they get to catch their meal. And their meal of choice? A mouse.
A giant centipede can make a very quick meal of a baby mouse. It just needs to get past the mother. If the centipede can catch it by surprise, the mouse is no match for its venom. If not, the centipede doesn't have quite as easy of a time. Those centipedes that are lucky enough to survive a bout with a mature mouse will have no trouble at all devouring the babies.
Giant centipede bites are extremely painful.
They inject their prey with venom, which contains muscle contractile agents to cause paralysis, histamines to cause inflammation, and cardiodepressants to lower blood pressure.
All of this combines to a bite deadly to prey and painful to humans.
Giant centipedes are massive, measuring up to 30 centimeters long. They would take up most of your forearm. Scolopendra subspinipes, commonly known by many names, including the orange-legged centipede, the red-headed centipede, and friend, can reach over 30 centimeters long, and they too have a very painful bite. There have been reports of people getting skin irritation just by having one of these guys walk on them. Scolopendra heros, or the giant desert centipede, is aposematic, and it backs it up. These multicolored horrors reportedly have one of the most painful bites in the world.
Despite all their creepy ferocity, centipedes are actually really good parents.
First of all, they don't actually copulate, so their offspring would never risk walking in on them. Males leave a spermatophore for the female to take and impregnate herself with. House centipedes and stone centipedes bury their eggs in soil or similar damp spaces to keep them safe from predators. But the massive scolopendromorphs and soil centipedes are very involved parents. The females will stay near the eggs, cleaning them off by licking them to keep them free from fungus. Without parental care, the eggs would die quickly, consumed by fungus. Once they hatch, it can take several years for the centipedes to reach sexual maturity.
And now, I'm Danielle Dufault, and I'm about to get bitten by a giant centipede. Just kidding. Of course not. Not crazy. Come on.
Thalassophobia is the intense fear of the sea, and for many, the bobbit worm is the reason for it. These horrifying marine worms have razor-sharp jaws that can snap their prey in half like twigs before dragging them down into their hellish burrows. The bobbit worm is pure nightmare fuel.
Bobbit worms are some of the most amazing, beautiful, and deadly bristleworms in the world. These danger noodles have been around for ages. The oldest bobbit worm dates back to 400 million years ago, and it was found in the Middle Devonian rocks of Ontario.
Described in 2017, Websteroprion armstrongi was a jawsome beast that was about 1 meter long. These worms are ambush hunters, and from a distance, they look harmless. But if viable prey swims within range, the bobbit explodes out of its hole and catches it in the blink of an eye. Then, the prey is dragged down into the depths of hell and never heard from again. The origin of their nickname might be an urban myth, but their mandibles' cutting power is true. They're known to cut small fish in half and stun larger prey just long enough to pull them into their mucus-lined burrows. Bobbit worms are mostly nocturnal predators, so they need to be able to sense prey in the dead of night without using their eyes. To do that, they have 5 antennae coated with sensory organs that can detect chemicals and vibrations in the water.
Once prey is detected, it's time to go on a chopping spree.
When striking, a bobbit worm fires out of its hole at around 6 meters a second. Their mouth parts are hidden, but on their way up to their prey, they turn outwards like a finger in a glove. The mandible provides the cutting power, and the secondary serrated mouth parts, called maxillae, grasp the prey and bring it into the mouth. There are some claims that the mandible can inject a paralyzing toxin, but this hasn't been confirmed and research is ongoing.
But their head is not the only interesting thing about bobbits. Their bodies can be beautifully iridescent, and they're super long.
Bobbits are just about 2.5 centimeters wide, but they can be up to 3 meters long. Their bodies are segmented, and each segment has bristles. As they grow, they add segments to their body. The current record holder for most segments was a Japanese bobbit with an amazing 673.
Having all those segments can be helpful for 2 reasons. 1, they can be ejected in case they get caught by a predator, and 2, detached segments might still work as sexual organs.
Bobbit worms have been observed breaking themselves into 2 or more parts when handled. Amazingly, sometimes more than one part can survive and regrow the missing parts. So, by splitting themselves, you get two short, genetically identical bobbit worms instead of a single long individual.
The sexual aspect of their segment detachment hasn't been confirmed. Nobody knows quite how bobbit worms mate, but their closest relatives are all broadcast spawners. That means that the females eject unfertilized eggs and the males fertilize them.
On some bristleworm species, possibly including the bobbit worm, as the animal becomes sexually mature, it grows gonads in its lower segments. When it's time to spawn, the lower segments separate and float towards the surface to meet other lower segments.
It's like a blind date for severed genitals.
If you find this cornucopia of adaptations a bit too much, you don't have to worry about encountering these long boys. Most bobbits live on the ocean floor at depths of between 10 and 40 meters, so you're unlikely to meet one of them at the beach.
But if you have a saltwater aquarium, you might accidentally bring a bobbit worm into your house.
Bobbit worms sometimes hitch rides in ocean rocks or water used to fill saltwater aquaria. When they're young, they can survive eating coral or other organic matter.
But when they get big, they start going for the fish. Something like this happened at the New Quay Blue Reef Aquarium in England.
The aquarium staff started finding mutilated dead fish in the morning. So they set traps overnight, but they would come back to find that these traps were destroyed.
See those legs? It's like a horror movie. I don't know how to see this guy without pissing him off.
This led to a complete draining of the aquarium.
After doing that, they found a 1.2 meter long bobbit worm, which they named Barry.
Oh my god, dude, I'm freaking out. That's some Tremor shit. Anybody see that movie?
By then, he had killed several fish, but was the most popular animal in the aquarium. So he was moved to his own enclosure and lived peacefully ever after.
And this is our famous bobbit worm underwater sand waterfall amazing tank. The bobbit worm is over here. This is a very deep sand bed, and he never seems to go below 2 inches of the sand, but we gave it to him anyway. I think he likes the waterfall. The view is too nice up top.
If you're outdoors, you're likely a stone's throw away from one. They're everywhere and have built a kingdom out of eating dead leaves. They can be poisonous, but for the most part, they're easy prey. So who are these leggy arthropods that have conquered the Earth? These are millipedes.
Millipedes are some of the most successful invertebrates on Earth.
They're found all over the world. Turn over any large dead piece of bark in the forest, and you're likely to find one. There are over 12,000 known species, ranging in size from 2 millimeters to 40 centimeters. Some scientists estimate that there could be up to 80,000 species in the world, from Russia to Patagonia. Millipedes speciate easily because they don't travel well and only live in particular environments. So it's easy for populations to become isolated. Their name means thousand-legged, but unfortunately, there are no known millipedes with that many legs.
The record holder for the most legs is Alacme planipes. It has 750 legs. That's one leggy boy.
They were considered extinct until 2012, when they were rediscovered in California. The most amazing thing about these millipedes is that they pack all their legs in a 3-centimeter long body. The silver medalist is another California millipede, Alacme tubinae. They only have 414 legs, but they make up for it by having 200 poison glands and 4 penises. The largest millipede in the world, the giant African millipede, can be up to 40 centimeters long and has 256 legs. On the other side of the spectrum are pill millipedes, also known as roly-polies, which are my personal favorite. These little guys only have about 70 legs, and compared to their cousins, they save a lot of money on shoes.
Some people consider millipedes a nuisance when they see them in their gardens, but it might have been us who took over their lands.
Millipedes are some of the oldest land animals on the planet. They're over 400 million years old. The oldest penis ever recorded was found in a millipede fossil. And the largest land-dwelling invertebrates ever were the millipedes of the Carboniferous. During that era, there was a lot more carbon in the air, which led to giant insects and arachnids, but none as large as the Arthropleura Millipedes, which grew to over 2 meters in length.
You could ride it like a pony! Modern millipedes are much smaller and are commonly mistaken for their much more aggressive cousins, the centipedes. But there are some very important differences between the two.
First, the similarities. They have segmented bodies and several legs. The differences are that millipedes have 4 legs on each segment, while centipedes only have 2. Centipedes are also venomous and carnivorous. But most millipedes eat dead plant matter, and only some are poisonous. If centipedes were chaotic evil, I would put millipedes at neutral good. The easiest way to tell them apart is by looking at their legs. Millipede legs are at the bottom of their bodies, while centipede legs are attached to the sides of their body. Despite the leg count advantage, millipedes are much slower than centipedes, and are better built for burrowing than running.
Millipede legs might not be the fastest out there, but they have a much more crucial job than running. They moonlight as penises.
Some of their legs become sexual organs as they grow and molt. The location of the sexual organs depends on the species, but most species have them in the 7th segment. During copulation, the male and the female touch undersides, while the male deposits a sperm capsule in the female's genital openings, which are usually in the 3rd segment.
Millipedes have many predators, but luckily for them, they have powerful chemical defenses.
Animals from every order eat millipedes. They're an easy catch. Some assassin bugs are millipede specialists and are immune to their poison. Mammals can feel the effects of the poison, but some, like coatis and meerkats, rub them on the floor to wipe off the poison before eating them.
Other animals have found a more recreational way of using millipedes.
Black lemurs catch red millipedes and get them to release their poison. The most psychedelic-looking millipedes are the Mitoxia. They're cyanide-producing millipedes from the sequoia forests of California. They're bioluminescent, and at night you can see hundreds of them illuminating the forest. This creature has 2 hot glue guns that shoot ultra-sticky goo out of its head. It has a retractable utility knife built into its mouth opening. And it comes in a range of richly colored velvet. Is this a crafter's dream or a cockroach's worst nightmare? This is the velvet worm.
Onychophora, commonly known as the velvet worm, is a phylum of over 200 species of super soft, super secretive, super secretors.
With their cuddly and plush-like appearance, the velvet worms are a little bit like cats. They have claws, they stalk their prey, and some can even be found hunting in packs. Closely related to arthropods and sharing an evolutionary relationship with our favorite water bear, the tardigrade, velvet worms are darkness-loving terrestrial creatures. Onychophora are classified in two major subgroups, Parapatidae and Parapatopsidae.
Even though they likely diverged hundreds of millions of years ago, before the breakup of Pangaea, neither group has changed much since, making these creatures out of time a favorite among evolutionary biologists.
Velvet worm skin is covered in a flexible cuticle of chitin, the same tough protective substance that is the main component in the exoskeletons of arthropods like insects, spiders, and crustaceans. But unlike its arthropod cousins, these creatures are soft and supple, covered in scales that give it its unmistakable velvety suit.
Velvet worms can be from 5 millimeters to 15 centimeters long, and come in a wide range of fashionable colors.
They are most often found in fetching shades of orange, brown, black, and blue, with a few cave-dwelling species decked out in all white. Their velvety skin is prone to drying out, so they live exclusively in areas of high humidity in the southern hemisphere and around the equator.
They are so sensitive to moisture levels in the air that they become less active during dry periods.
But even if you search the tropical forest litter where they hang out, you might have a tough time finding one of these daylight-hating shy guys.
The most striking quality of the velvet worm is how it strikes both predators and prey by squirting them with 2 sticky streams of self-hardening slime.
Animals squirt for all kinds of reasons. Other than the obvious waste disposal and reproduction, animals will also use the power of the squirt for movement, like squids, as well as for defense, like the horned lizard that shoots blood out of its eyes, and for hunting, like the velvet worm.
This sticky slayer definitely takes the prize for most unique method of murder.
To locate its prey of crickets, spiders, beetles, termites, cockroaches, and other invertebrates, the predatory velvet worm uses its sensory antenna. Once located, the velvet worm does something truly unique. It squirts its prey with super sticky slime. The slime is held in large glands in its head segments, kinda like their versions of web shooters. When it's ready to attack, the velvet worm shoots its goo out of 2 openings, called oral papillae, immobilizing its victims.
Before we get into the absolutely horrifying way that the velvet worm slices into and liquefies its prey, we need to talk about the unique spray action of its slime.
The velvet worm doesn't just spray its slime straight outwards. The high-pressure power of its squirt, combined with the elasticity of its oral papillae, turn these openings into the equivalent of 2 out-of-control fire hoses. As a result, the slime oscillates as it sprays upwards of 30 centimeters, blanketing its snack in a layer of immobilizing goo.
This fast-action spray may seem to go against the otherwise slow nature of this beast.
But because of the syringe-like structure of the gland and small opening, this slowpoke slime-squirting muscles don't actually have to move very quickly to result in a powerful spray. When not being used, their rubbery goo guns fold inwards like accordions to await their next target.
The slime hardens almost instantly into a glassy texture when exposed to air. Once the prey is sealed in its glass house of death, the velvet worm goes in for the kill.
Using blade-like jaws that are tucked inside its mouth, the velvet worm slices its way into its prey's exoskeleton and injects it with digestive saliva, which contains mucus and digestive enzymes. Once the insides of its prey are liquefied, the velvet worm slurps them out like a milkshake, in true horror movie fashion.
Velvet worms also use their slime as self-defense against predators, like birds, spiders, and centipedes. Hemprichi's coral snake, which lives north of the Amazon River, feeds almost exclusively on these squishy squirters.
And squishy they are. They are so flexible, in fact, that they can scrunch themselves into the tiniest crevices, another trait that comes in handy when trying to elude predators.
Because of their elusive nature, not much is known about their behavior. But a study on one Australian species, Euparapetoides rowelli, showed that they are indeed capable of complex social behavior. Groups of up to 15 individuals with complex, female-led social hierarchies were found to live and hunt together, with dominant females feeding alone first.
Males of the same species will set out to scout out new areas to colonize, like prey-rich decomposing logs, and then secrete a pheromone to attract both males and females to it.
In addition to their super soaker-like slime throwers, velvet worms are also unique in that their young can be born in 3 different ways, depending on the species.
Some are oviparous, laying eggs like birds do. Some are ovoviparous, meaning they hatch eggs inside the body like some species of snakes. The most common form of reproduction for this phylum, though, is viviparous, meaning that they birth live young, just like us humans.
It seems that that's where our similarities with the velvet worm end, unless of course you're Peter Parker. So what should we talk about next? Please let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for new episodes every week. Thanks for watching. See ya!